you can probably tell by that music and the opening graphic that today we're going to be talking about Bray Wyatt. And I want to take us to a specific time in his career. 9 years ago, in 2016. How's it going, everyone? Chris back again with episode 33 of What Could Have Been in Wrestling. And like I just said, today we're talking about the late Bray Wyatt. Now, there's a specific reason I want to take us back to that time in 2016 and talk about something that really could have been big for his career, but was derailed by injury. Oh, we're going to get into that. So, we're just going to start off in January at the Royal Rumble. During that time, the Wyatt family had just been eliminated by Brock Lesnar, and Bray then comes out to face the Beast man-to-man. And what was being hinted at this point was a potential match between Bray and Brock at WrestleMania 32. Now, I remember being very excited for this match. I actually thought that these two could work well together, and I felt with the Wyatt family by his side, you could really have some doubt if Lesnar could actually take down this faction. And I actually felt like it would be a good setup to have Lesnar have to run through guys like Harper and, of course, most specifically, Braun Strowman to get to Bray Wyatt. And I really felt, like I said, you could actually position Lesnar as a little bit of the underdog here because he's constantly outnumbered. Unfortunately, Vince didn't want to go with that, and instead, he changed his mind like he always did around that time, and we wound up getting Brock versus Dean Ambrose, which was not a good match, and both sides agreed on that because they just didn't work well together, and Dean clearly on Stone Cold's podcast made his feelings known about that. And Bray, with the rest of the Wyatt family, was, I don't want to say relegated, but they didn't get a match. And instead, I think it was Eric Rowan who got squashed in like 5 seconds by The Rock. And then, of course, Cena returned, and Cena and The Rock took out all 4 members of the Wyatt family, and they were pretty much made to look like losers, which was not the best way to use them, obviously. So in this situation, I want to keep it where Brock and Bray do square off at WrestleMania 32. And like I said, you can still have it where Brock has to run through the other members of the Wyatt family. And as we go through and go into Roadblock after the Rumble, because again, the Wyatt family did eliminate Lesnar from the Royal Rumble, instead of having that handicap match, where I believe it was Luke Harper and Bray Wyatt versus Brock, which then turned into a one-on-one match because Bray just ran away. You can have it as a segment instead, where the Wyatt family actually gets the better of Brock. They surround him, and they beat him down, much like how the Shield used to with everybody. And you can actually have Bray Wyatt and the Wyatt family standing over Brock in a sign of superiority. So again, the always dominant beast, Brock Lesnar, now looks a little outmanned. So now post-Roadblock, as we go into Mania, I know Lesnar wouldn't be on every single Raw. Again, Lesnar only works specific dates. So I think it would be much like his feud with The Undertaker the year before. It would be on Bray to cut promos to lead to intrigue for the match. And it would be on Bray to really be the one selling this match and hyping the crowd up for it, so it's a match that people would still want to see. Bray was one of the best talkers, especially with the Wyatt family by his side. his promos, even though they kind of got a little repetitive and sometimes they added a little too much mystery where you weren't totally sure what he was talking about, I felt like he had a very specialized style, individualized style of cutting promos that you couldn't replicate. And I think there would have been enough intrigue in that match where he could have done enough on his own if we didn't have another confrontation between Bray and Brock before Mania. Now at WrestleMania, when they face, I do think it's very apparent that Brock would beat Bray Wyatt. Brock would still come out the victor because Brock really, until he did his feud with Roman a couple years back, Brock rarely ever got pinned unless it was Goldberg beating him. And I don't really think the loss would hurt Bray Wyatt as much because Bray, again, still would lay claim to being the one who eliminated Lesnar from the Rumble. And of course, Bray was relatively protected at that point because it did seem that he didn't have to wrestle too much, and he did have victories over Dean Ambrose at that time and also a departing Ryback. Because I remember before Mania, he did actually have a good string of victories under his belt. Now, post-Mania, obviously there is no more Lesnar. And the night after Mania, the Wyatt family actually helped the new champion, everybody's favorite wrestler at that time, Roman Reigns, fend off everyone's favorite faction, the League of Nations. Yes, remember the League of Nations? I try not to. During that time, when the League of Nations did jump Roman, the Wyatt family actually came to Roman's aid. And then the acting general manager at that time for Raw, Shane McMahon, came out and said, "We're having a tag match tonight. It is Bray Wyatt and Roman Reigns teaming up against, I think it was Alberto and Rusev." And in that match, Bray Wyatt was the one who got the pin, and there were signs of a face turn coming. Unfortunately, Bray was actually injured not long after that and was on the shelf for a few months. And by the time he got back, there was the brand split. And then when he came back on SmackDown, he just started feuding with the New Day, who had made a face turn. And that potential face turn for the Wyatt family, and Bray in particular, was totally forgotten about. And I remember that was something I also found intriguing, a face turn for the Wyatt family, and something I really wanted to see play out, which we never got to see. In this situation again, not only does he face Lesnar at Mania, but he also doesn't get injured. And I think you can move forward with a Bray Wyatt face turn. I do think that Bray was not stale, but I think the crowd was ready to see him operate as a babyface. I think his act was still very over at the time, and I think it would have been very interesting to see who he would have feuded with, especially with having the Wyatt family by his side. Another reason I do say the crowd would have gotten behind a Bray Wyatt face turn was because after his match with Ambrose before Mania, Triple H actually came out to attack Dean because they were going to face at Roadblock for the title. And before Triple H could get to Dean Ambrose, Bray Wyatt stared down Triple H, who again, remember, at that time was champion. When they did their stare down, there were the yes chants from the crowd, and Bray made it be known that he had his eye on Triple H's WWE title. And I remember thinking to myself, this guy already in this one segment is already more over than Roman was at the time. Maybe he should be the one who eventually takes the belt off Roman, because you all knew Roman was winning at Mania, which he did, to the shock of no one. So going back to Bray Wyatt, now still showing signs of a face turn, the guy I'd want to pair him with for Payback, that next coming pay-per-view after Mania, would be the new Intercontinental Champion, The Miz. He had defeated The Miz, defeated Zack Ryder the night after Mania. And while he had a very good reign, I remember, he did face Cesaro at Payback and won. And in this case, I'd rather have him see him face Bray Wyatt. Distractions by Maurice were common at the time because she had made her return to the company in her husband's corner, and she was part of the reason The Miz was able to win the Intercontinental title. But in this case, with the Wyatt family there, there's no way that Maurice is going to be able to intimidate or distract the entire Wyatt family. And at Payback, I'd like to see Bray Wyatt hit The Miz with Sister Abigail, and I think it would have been a good move to make him the Intercontinental Champion. There was a run where they were trying to establish that belt again as a serious mid-card title, and the title that a lot of guys would win before hitting real main event status. See guys like Bret Hart, Shawn Michaels, Stone Cold, etc., who use that belt as a stepping stone to becoming the world champion. So in this case now, Bray is your Intercontinental Champion, and obviously I think that there would be a solid mid-card group of guys wanting to go after him, including a former champion like Kevin Owens, and of course a newly debuting Sami Zayn, who had debuted at the Rumble that year. And of course, The Miz would want to lay claim to it, and you can even also throw Cesaro in the picture. As we go into it and the weeks go by on Raw, Bray can still get key victories over guys like, well, he had already beaten Dean Ambrose, like I said, going into Mania, but he can beat someone like Kevin Owens, as he again is making more of a face turn, so he can beat the heel Kevin Owens. He can even retain the Intercontinental title in a triple threat match with The Miz and Cesaro. So you can still, like I said, get Cesaro in the mix. And then going into Extreme Rules, there was an excellent four-way match for the Intercontinental title on that pay-per-view with Cesaro, Miz, Kevin Owens, and Sami Zayn, with The Miz retaining the belt. In this case, I would like to see there be a five-way, but have it as an Extreme Rules match, where you still have the four men I mentioned, along with Bray Wyatt as champion, in a five-way Extreme Rules match where it's one fall to a finish. And that way you can protect Bray, because I think The Miz should win the Intercontinental title back that night. But you can have him pin someone like Sami Zayn. So this time, Bray does not have to eat the pinfall. Now, I know it's a short reign for Bray Wyatt, but there is a reason for that. Because I want him setting his sights on a title that's a little bit bigger now. Because I just mentioned how the Intercontinental title is a stepping stone, and that's how I'd want it to be used. Now, at this time, Roman was still champion, and on that night at Extreme Rules, he did beat AJ Styles in their rematch in an Extreme Rules match. And post-match, after he won, Seth Rollins returned from injury and attacked Roman and laid claim to his time, to his right as being number one contender, because he had never lost the belt in the first place. He had torn his ACL and was out with injury. We can still go ahead with that. And as Bray is now gearing up to be put more in a main event spotlight, because again, remember, he had tagged with Roman in the main event on Raw the night after Mania. Something else very important happened around that time, and that was exposed on Raw and acknowledged by Roman on Twitter, because he had popped and actually tested positive for performance-enhancing drugs or steroids, whatever you want to call it. And Roman, he acknowledged that he had made a big mistake, or whatever it was that he said. I'll have the tweet up as a part of this episode. Now that's important because as we now head into Extreme Rules, I actually think it's something that can happen where Roman had to lose the belt because he was suspended, after failing after that wellness violation. And Seth did beat him for the undisputed title. After that, again, this is, I'm sorry, by the way, I didn't mention, this is at Money in the Bank the next month after Extreme Rules. Right after Seth won, Dean Ambrose, who had won Money in the Bank earlier in the night, cashed in on Seth, hit him with the briefcase, and I believe he also hit him with Dirty Deeds, and he won the title. So then all 3 Shield members had won the title that night. That can still definitely happen. But the next night on Raw, when Dean comes out as champion, rather than Seth trying to lay claim to the belt, what you can have there is, I actually think that as Seth actually comes out, you can have Bray Wyatt attack him. And Bray Wyatt can actually take out, not Dean, he can take out Seth. And still, like I said, because I'm still sticking with him as being a babyface, so now we have a babyface versus babyface matchup. You can have Bray, much like he did with Triple H, hint to Dean that he wants that world title. And I know we still needed to get Seth versus Dean, especially because there was the big Shield triple threat right after the brand split. But I personally would want to hold off on that. 1, after Roman's suspension for the wellness violation. And 2, because I still think the Bray Wyatt would be a better challenger than Seth. Because Bray has been protected, like I said, leading into Mania. Even with the loss to Lesnar, he had just been Intercontinental Champion. And I think it would have been a fresh role for Bray, and also a fresh look in the main event scene, having a new face challenge for the world title. Because Seth had been champion so much for the year previous, and the Shield had been a focal point for so many years, I think people would be ready to see Bray Wyatt in that main event role. You can have him challenge Dean Ambrose for the title that night on Raw. So not only is it a new face in the main event scene, you also have it where the people of Raw are getting a free title match, which would have generated some intrigue for Raw going forward as they go into the brand split. With that, I don't think Bray wins it here. I do think that there would be interference from Seth Rollins to call off the match, because of Seth being attacked earlier in the night by Bray Wyatt. But I still think it would have been a very intriguing way and a much more interesting way to use Bray rather than just moving him over to SmackDown and having them feud with the New Day for no reason, which is what they did in reality, and having Xavier Woods be so scared of Bray Wyatt. I think it would be actually a much more interesting feud, having him feud with Dean over the belt, and also clearly adding Seth Rollins into the mix. And like I said, while the Shield triple threat match wouldn't happen around that time, I actually think you can save that for a more important event, not a B-list show. You could have had the Shield triple threat happen at SummerSlam, and you could actually have, instead, Bray Wyatt at the next pay-per-view taking on taking on Dean Ambrose. Because if you remember, when Bray was the number one contender, in a number one contenders match, I should say, on SmackDown when Dean was champion, they had him lose to Dolph Ziggler, which immediately relegated Dean's world title as the number 2 belt in the company, because of course it was SmackDown and Raw was always the superior brand. And it just felt so cheap because Dolph Ziggler was challenging for it. So I just feel having a serious character, having a guy who's been protected and now they want to see in a main event role, take on Dean rather than a guy like Dolph Ziggler. I know I'm jumping a little bit ahead. I just feel like it would have given more credibility to Dean's reign, and it would have also made people see Bray in a more serious light, and he would be looked at, in the people's eyes, as a main event player, not a guy relegated to the mid-card, always doing mid-card feuds, and unfortunately, it started being around that time where he was always coming out on the losing end of feuds as well. So that's where I'm going to stop it. I'm actually going, I know I jumped around a little bit near the end, but I want to stop it right before the brand split happens. Let me know if you'd want me to do a follow-up on it, and if you'd want me to do a part 2 and see if Bray could have won the world title, how his reign after beating Ambrose would have gone, rather than AJ Styles beating Ambrose for the belt. And also, let me know what you think if he actually could have beaten Brock Lesnar at WrestleMania, rather than taking the pin there. And let me know what you think of a supposed and potential Bray Wyatt face turn, like what they were hinting at post-WrestleMania. So drop your comments down below. And obviously, let me know what topics you'd want me to talk about in the future. I also want to say, and just mention something very quickly. This is kind of a big deal this month because just a few days ago, I hit my 1-year anniversary on YouTube. I dropped my first video of what if Brock had stayed in the WWE post-2004 back in June of last year. And it really has been fun to see how this channel's grown and how much more interaction I'm getting on these videos. Comparing the two series I've been doing, it seems the What Could Have Been series is more of a crowd favorite. And I just want to take a moment to thank everyone who's ever liked, commented, or, just watched any of my videos. Especially, though, JQXZ Network for all your suggestions. Dalek of Chaos has been another one. And to one of my best friends, Brendan, thank you very much for all your constant feedback and helping make this channel so much better. Because, again, to you subscribers and just the people who do watch, it's you guys who definitely make this channel what it is. And also motivate me to keep making these videos. So again, drop your comments down below on what you think about the Bray Wyatt run. I know he's still missed to this day by a lot of the wrestling community, especially one of my good friends back where I grew up. It was definitely one of his favorite wrestlers. And like I said, please let me know what you want me to talk about in the future. And as always, don't forget to like and subscribe. And I will be back soon with another episode of What Could Have Been in Wrestling. Again, thanks so much, guys.